Hello everyone, Mark here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes national, international and business, economy, news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school. A new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of Let's Grow Together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. June 10th, 2021. Important national news. Center announces hike in MSP for paddy, pulses, oilseeds farmer groups unhappy with the increase in paddy price. Special correspondent. The central government has hiked the minimum support price, MSP, for common paddy to 1,940 Indian rupees a quintal for the coming Kharif season, less than 4% higher than last year's price of 1,868 Indian rupees. The decision was taken by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs on Wednesday. In a bid to encourage crop diversification, there were slightly higher increases in the MSP for pulses, oilseeds and coarse cereals. Both TUR and Urad Dal saw the MSP rise by 300 Indian rupees, a 5% increase to 6,300 Indian rupees a quintal, while the highest absolute increase was for sesamum, whose MSP rose 6.6% to 7,307 Indian rupees. Groundnut and Niger seed saw an increase of 275 Indian rupees and 235 Indian rupees respectively. However, maize saw a minimal hike of just 20 Indian rupees to 1,870 Indian rupees a quintal. The MSP is the rate at which the government purchases crops from farmers, and is based on a calculation of at least 1.5 times the cost of production incurred by the farmers. This year, the MSP for bajra was set at 85% above the cost of production, while the MSP for Urad and TUR will ensure 60% returns. The MSPs for the remaining crops were mostly set around the stipulated 50% above the cost of production. The announcement comes at a time when farm unions have been protesting for more than 6 months on Delhi's outskirts, demanding legislation to guarantee MSP for all farmers for all crops, and a repeal of 3 contentious farm reform laws. Terming the announcement a jumla, false promise, as it did not account for the full cost of production, farmers groups under the Samay Unite Kisan Morcha, SKM, noted that some increases, especially for maize, did not even keep pace with inflation. There is no mechanism that guarantees that every farmer can get at least the MSP as the floor price in the market. Therefore, this is a meaningless concept as far as farmers are concerned, and that is why this movement has been asking for a statutory entitlement for all farmers so that a remunerative MSP can be ensured for all farmers, said the SKM. Briefing the press after the meeting, Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar reiterated that the MSPs were here to stay. Shun vaccine nationalism, says UNGA President-elect. It will destroy efforts to eradicate pandemic, Abdullah Shahid. Abdullah Shahid. Suhasini Haidar Mira Srinivasan, New Delhi/Colombo. Vaccine nationalism would destroy countries' efforts to eradicate the pandemic and must be avoided at all costs, United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, President-elect and Maldivian Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid said on Tuesday. Terming the disparity in vaccination coverage in developed countries and the rest of the world unacceptable, he said, "No one is safe until everyone is safe." He was speaking to The Hindu from New York, a day after his historic election as PGA, President of the General Assembly, with a decisive majority of 143 of 191 votes cast by member countries. Human rights would be a central theme at the UNGA, Mr. Shahid said, while he, as president, would refrain from taking sides on contentious issues, such as Jammu and Kashmir, and remain impartial. India was one of the first countries who came out supporting me, he said, thanking the Indian leadership. Former Minister Jideen Prasada leaves Congress, joins BJP. Couldn't he serve people's interests in Congresses? Jideen Prasada. Nischula Hebar, New Delhi. Former Union Minister Jideen Prasada joined the BJP on Wednesday, leaving the Congress, where he felt he was unable to serve the interests of his people and society. His induction took place at the BJP's national headquarters here in the presence of Railway Minister Piyush Goyal and BJP media cell in charge Anil Balanai. Mr. Prasada said he joined the BJP as he felt it was currently the only party that was an institutionally national party, and all others were either personality-oriented or regional in nature. I have been associated with the Congress for 3 generations and thought long and hard before leaving. I left because I felt that if one is unable to serve one's people or protect their interests being in a certain party, it's better to leave. Under the BJP and in the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I feel that I will be better able to serve my people, he said at a press meet. Relatives of patients who died in Agra hospital seek pro bono talked of mock drill in video. Police personnel deployed outside Shri Paras Hospital in Agra on Tuesday. Pti. Omar Rashid Lucknow. The relatives of patients who died at a hospital in Agra have demanded a high-level probe and the arrest of the owner after a video surfaced in which he is allegedly heard talking of conducting a mock drill to check which patient would survive if oxygen support was cut off. Among the victims was Police Head Constable Ashok Kumar Singh's wife who died on April 26 at Shri Paras Hospital. She was admitted on April 25. Mr. Singh demanded a high-level probe. This was a deliberate act. The doctor of the hospital should be arrested. We want justice, he said. Mr. Singh said he received a call from the hospital around 5 a.m. on April 26. The doctor said there was scarcity of oxygen, and asked to shift the patient elsewhere. But when I reached the hospital, they said they could manage for an hour or so. They also asked me to arrange our own cylinders, Mr. Singh said. He said he was not allowed to see his wife on the day of her death. The matter came to light on Tuesday after the owner of Shri Paras Hospital, Arinjay Jain, was heard in a video allegedly claiming how the hospital shut off oxygen supply for 5 minutes on April 27 as part of a mock drill to see which patients would survive and which would not. Hospital sealed. 22 patients started turning blue while 74 others survived, he is heard saying in the video. Following a preliminary probe, Agra District Magistrate N. Prabhu ordered infer against Mr. Jain under the Epidemics Act, while the hospital was sealed and the doctor's license suspended. Mr. Prabhu, however, said there were no deaths due to lack of oxygen in the hospital on the said days, April 26 and 27. On April 26 and 27, 7 patients had died at the hospital, the administration said. Vishal Sharma, a journalist with a Hindi daily, lost his mother to COVID-19 at the hospital. While there was an oxygen crisis at the hospital and in the district on April 26 and 27, he says he never doubted the integrity of the doctors. However, Mr. Jain's admission has ignited doubt in his mind and he thinks there had been some misdoing. The doctor is saying it all himself, he said. Mr. Sharma claimed that on the day of his mother's death, they were not allowed to view the patients through the CCTV, as was the usual practice since they were not permitted inside the COVID-19 ward. Mr. Sharma said the fur lodged against the hospital was an eyewash. They should take such action that these things don't repeat. The kin of patients also claimed that the number of people who died on the 2 days was much higher than the official figure of 7. Central deputation of officers very low, DPT tells states not sending officers may affect future cadre review proposals. Vijata Singh, New Delhi. With the states not nominating enough officers for central deputation, the Department of Personnel and Training, DPT, has shot off a letter to the state governments, cautioning them that not sending enough officers may affect future cadre review proposals. For instance, Uttar Pradesh has over 500 Indian Administrative Service officers, but data show that only 32 IAS officers are presently on central deputation. West Bengal has around 280 IAS officers, but only 11 are posted with the central ministries. Bihar fares better with 32 IAS officers on central deputation out of 208, whereas 28 out of the 167 IAS officers of the Assam Meghalaya cadre are serving the center. Out of the 241 Gujarat cadre officers, 27 are posted with the union government. Rajasthan has deputed 13 out of its 247 IAS officers to the center. An official of Uttar Pradesh cadre, however, said it was not that officers were not willing to go on central deputation, but the no objection clearance was hard to come by. The final clearance is given by the Chief Minister. Non-card holders return with empty hands as ration runs out. Despite several trips to distribution centers, many were unable to get food grains. People ignoring social distancing norms while waiting to collect free ration at a government school in northeast Delhi's Vishwasnagar. R.V. Murthy R.V. Murthy. Shinjini Ghosh, New Delhi. The plight of cities poor continued as several government centers distributing ration to non-card holders kept their gates shut due to unavailability of ration. People who had queued up outside some of the government schools said it had already been 4 days that they were returning home unsuccessfully as food grains had run out of stock at the centers. Many said they were subjected to COVID-19 tests and given tokens and asked to return the next day, only to find the ration distribution centers closed. Desperate attempts. Babli, a resident of Dakshinpuri, who has been visiting a government school in Hausrani for the last 4 days said, "After hours of standing in a queue, I managed to enter the school on the second day but was told that I will not get the ration if I don't undergo a COVID-19 test. So I got tested, after which I was given a token and asked to come the following day, by which time the stock had run out. I am the sole earner in the family and have been out of work for all these months. Will the governments never think about the poor? They win elections because of us, and once elected, they forget about the poor," said Babli. Zulekha Khatun, a resident of Jagdamba Camp in South Delhi, said, "First they said that we have to get tests done, which we did. But even after that, all we have right now is a piece of paper which is supposed to act as a token. We did whatever they asked us to do, but now what? How am I supposed to keep my children? My youngest child is 5 years old now. I have been borrowing grains from others and feeding the family currently. But how long can this arrangement continue? I can't even return to my village in Samastipur as we do not have enough money to buy tickets. There is not even enough to take an auto to the distribution center. I walk for half an hour each side in this heat," said Khatun. Multiple trips. With not enough money for basic sustenance, for many, making multiple trips to the distribution centers each day was equally challenging. 58-year-old Abrina Khatun said, "If the government does not want to give us ration, they can clearly state that. We are spending money each day and visiting the center just to return empty-handed. Last year during the lockdown, I at least got ration for a month, but this time there has been nothing." Priyanka Devi, a domestic helper who has been out of work since the lockdown began, said, "We are desperate at this point. I have been coming to the center since Sunday. Most days we spend hours in the heat with empty stomach as we feel that reaching early might improve our chances. But looks like there are no food grains available at this point." Green economy and mobility, key aspects of Draft 2041 Master Plan. It also focuses on affordable housing, in situ rehabilitation. An area-based improvement approach will be adopted for revitalizing commercial and socio-cultural hubs. File photo Shivkumar Pushpakar. Staff reporter, New Delhi. A dedicated green development area, GDA, for incentivizing large-scale implementation of green economies, transit-oriented development aligned with mass transit, multimodal integration, and facilitation of first and last mile connectivity are some of the key aspects of the Draft Master Plan for Delhi, MPD, 2041. Which was placed in the public domain while inviting suggestions and objections from stakeholders. Addressing pollution and climate change by promoting clean economic activities and minimized vehicular pollution by creating multimodal hubs and encouraging green mobility are some of the aspects the MPD 2041 concentrates on. The draft states that polluting industries will not be permitted to operate within Delhi, and the list of such industries will be periodically updated by the Delhi government and DDA. The draft also highlights the enhancement of a green-blue infrastructure by taking into account the Arvali Ridge, the Yamuna, forests, wetlands, parks, and other assets. The GDA policy has been proposed for green belt villages, and it permits restricted development and prescribes substantial proportion of land to be maintained as wooded area and green cover, according to the draft MPD 2041. Affordable housing and in-situ rehabilitation of those living in slums and JJ clusters were other key aspects outlined by the MPD 2041, and the draft document said that in North or East colonies, settlement-level improvements are required to make all parts of the settlement accessible for emergency vehicles like ambulances and fire tenders. Forms of workspaces. Apart from creation of strategic hubs of high investment, the draft MPD 2041 also lays out a plan for facilitating new forms of workspaces. A finer network of decentralized workspaces in the form of small warehousing for e-commerce, co-working spaces for startup economy shall be facilitated. The plan provides adequate space norms and facilities for supporting informal economies, the document read. According to the draft MPD 2041, an area-based improvement approach will be adopted for revitalizing the commercial and socio-cultural hubs of the city, including areas like Connaught Place, Mundi House, Pragti Maidan, and Shahjahanabad, Walled City. Improved connectivity and transport infrastructure, shift from private to shared mobility, and making the capital walkable and cyclable are other key aspects mentioned in the MPD 2041. A comprehensive mobility plan, CMP, shall be prepared for Delhi to achieve systematic integration across all levels and modes of urban transport, the draft MPD 2041 stated. 60% of mothers return to work within 6 months of delivery, reveals study. Government creches unequipped to admit children under 1 year. The study interviewed 150 mothers who are predominantly employed in the informal economy. Special arrangement. Special correspondent, New Delhi. A study on breastfeeding knowledge and practices of working mothers in the informal economy in New Delhi has shown that 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, EBF, was difficult as 38% of mothers returned to work under 3 months of delivery and 60% within 6 months of delivery, leading to early weaning. The study, conducted by researchers from the Indian Institute for Human Settlements, interviewed 150 mothers, including domestic workers, vendors, home-based and barter working mothers, out of which 79% were breastfeeding. 4 sites covered. Of the 21 women who had a child under 6 months, 14 reported exclusive breastfeeding. The study was conducted in 4 sites in Delhi where the predominant employment is in the informal economy. The study found that while deciding to take one's child to work, there was an overall hesitation to carry a child under 12 months to work, fearing infection, need for mother's attention, and disruption at work. Work and duty. Only 37% of the sampled population reported taking their child to work regularly or often, of which 59% were working from their home, the study said. It also found that local creches, run by the government, were not equipped to admit children under 12 months, and mostly preferred children over 2 years. The pathways for intervention suggested by the study include delayed return to work, increased spatial and temporal proximity of a mother with her child, effective knowledge and deeper understanding of the reasoning and implications behind the 6-month exclusive breastfeeding recommendation, and enabling the physical environment at home and workplace to the needs of a mother for managing child care. 60% of mothers return to work within 6 months of delivery, reveals study. Government creches unequipped to admit children under 1 year. The study interviewed 150 mothers who are predominantly employed in the informal economy. Special arrangement. Special correspondent, New Delhi. A study on breastfeeding knowledge and practices of working mothers in the informal economy in New Delhi has shown that 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, EBF, was difficult as 38% of mothers returned to work under 3 months of delivery and 60% within 6 months of delivery, leading to early weaning. The study, conducted by researchers from the Indian Institute for Human Settlements, interviewed 150 mothers, including domestic workers, vendors, home-based and barter working mothers, out of which 79% were breastfeeding. 4 sites covered. Of the 21 women who had a child under 6 months, 14 reported exclusive breastfeeding. The study was conducted in 4 sites in Delhi where the predominant employment is in the informal economy. The study found that while deciding to take one's child to work, there was an overall hesitation to carry a child under 12 months to work, fearing infection, need for mother's attention, and disruption at work. Work and duty. Only 37% of the sampled population reported taking their child to work regularly or often, of which 59% were working from their home, the study said. It also found that local creches, run by the government, were not equipped to admit children under 12 months, and mostly preferred children over 2 years. The pathways for intervention suggested by the study include delayed return to work, increased spatial and temporal proximity of a mother with her child, effective knowledge and deeper understanding of the reasoning and implications behind the 6-month exclusive breastfeeding recommendation, and enabling the physical environment at home and workplace to the needs of a mother for managing child care. Inoculation drive for 18 to 44 age group restarts at government centers, booking resumes as city receives fresh stock of vaccines. A beneficiary gets a vaccine shot in Delhi on Wednesday. Sushil Kumar Verma. Staff reporter, New Delhi. The capital has received 1.25 lakh doses of Covishield and 20,000 doses of Covaxin vaccines for 18 to 44 age group, and the youth can now get vaccinated for free at government centers, AAP leader Atishi said on Wednesday. Many people between 18 to 44 years had been administered the first dose but were unable to get the second dose. Now, Covaxin is available and people can get the second dose, the AAP leader said. Ms. Atishi said that private hospitals were administering the vaccines at exorbitant costs, and now vaccines are available at government centers free of cost. The Delhi government spokesperson said that after the arrival of the Covishield vaccine doses, booking for the first dose of 18 to 44 age group will restart from Wednesday. From today, Wednesday, booking for the first dose of Covishield for 18 to 44 will restart on the CoWIN platform, the spokesperson said. There was no stock of Covishield for 18 to 44 years in government facilities for the past many days, and Covaxin was being given only for second dose. So, there was no free first dose for the age group. Ms. Atishi said that the total tally of vaccines administered in Delhi has reached over 57 lakh, and 13 lakh people have been administered both the doses. She also said that the government has received Covaxin for people of 45 years of age and above. On Tuesday, we had said that the stock of Covaxin is over in Delhi and it was unavailable for the 45-plus age group people at many centers. Yesterday, late in the evening, Delhi received 30,000 doses of Covaxin and they are being distributed to different centers. So, from Thursday, doses of Covaxin will be available for those above the age of 45 years, Ms. Atishi said. Over 300 new cases. The capital reported 337 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, taking the total cases to 14,30,128, according to a health bulletin released by the Delhi government on Wednesday. Also, 36 deaths were reported and the total number of deaths stood at 24,704. A total of 73,241 tests were done in a day, the bulletin said. Of the total cases, 14,00,913 people have recovered and there are 4,511 active cases. The test positivity rate was 0.46%. Directive withdrawn in Lakshadweep. Controversial order required the deployment of government staff on fishing boats. No takers, the Lakshadweep Government Employees Union took exception to the order. Special Correspondent Kochi. In the face of criticism, the Director of Port, Shipping and Navigation in the Lakshadweep administration has quietly withdrawn the order for the deployment of government staff on fishing boats. Director Sachin Sharma also reversed the May 28 order by which the security around ports, jetties, ships and other vessels was raised to level 2 on the basis of recent intelligence inputs. In an email message to the Deputy Director, S&T, Kochi, Assistant Directors, Port Assistants on the island, the CSO of the Lakshadweep Development Corporation Limited, LDCL, and the Assistant Commandant of the Central Industrial Security Force, CISF, in Kochi on June 7, Mr. Sharma cited the orders of May 28 and June 2 regarding strengthening of security in ports/ships and jetties, and said as per further inputs, all concerned may revert back to standard protocol and SOP's standard operating procedures. The Lakshadweep Government Employees Union had recently taken exception to the order asking for government employees to go on board fishing vessels for intelligence collection. The order was also criticized by fishers' forums. Sources said maritime security agencies were also peeved with the order, which was interpreted as interfering with their jurisdictional powers. The June 2 communication was about a security review meeting chaired by an advisor to the Union Territory Administrator. It said decisions had been taken to deploy government staff on fishing craft, strengthen security measures to monitor local fishing boats, and intensify checking of motorized and passenger vessels. It had also ordered measures for the installation of CCTV cameras at berthing ports and the heli base, and the baggage and passenger checking facility at the Mangalore and Begpura ports. The LDCL had been asked to inform shipmasters to remain vigilant and alert. Fight COVID like a surgical strike. HC Court asks Maharashtra government about door-to-door vaccination. Special Correspondent Mumbai. The Bombay High Court on Wednesday asked the Maharashtra government if it had applied for permission to give door-to-door vaccination, and told the central government, COVID-19 is the common enemy, and you must consider the battle as a surgical strike. A division bench of Chief Justice Deepankar Dutta and Justice G.S. Kulkarni was hearing a public interest litigation petition filed by two city-based lawyers that sought vaccination at home for those above 75 years, bedridden or wheelchair-bound. Advocate Dhruti Kapadia, representing the petitions, told the court that Kerala had been conducting vaccination for bedridden people and the Vasai Virar Municipal Corporation had started door-to-door vaccination. The court asked the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, BMC, how a senior political member got vaccinated at the beginning of the drive. BMC's counsel Anil Sakar said he would inform tomorrow. The court said, "We want to know today. We are hearing the matter today. We are talking about your model to the entire country and are appreciating your efforts." Did Kerala wait for the nod from the central government? Either the defense can be that you have given him politician a different vaccine, or you have nothing to do with it, then we will ask the state. The bench told Additional Solicitor General of India Anil Singh, "You have taken a decision for near-to-door vaccination. You have agreed that COVID-19 is the common enemy. You must consider the battle as a surgical strike. We know the areas and the people who may be carrying the virus. We should go to the borders and fight. We see that decisions are being taken by the center, but they are delayed. So many states are doing this. Then why not make it uniform for all states? Paddy MSP hiked less than 4% from last year. The hike in rates was proof of the center's commitment, the agriculture minister said. On the protests, he said the center was always ready to hold talks, but the unions had not accepted the options presented to them for suspending the 3 laws. If they want to talk about any other option other than a repeal of these laws, we are ready to discuss and arrive at a solution, he told journalists earlier. Deliberate policy move. The center said the higher rate of returns being promised for URAD, TUR, and oils eds was a deliberate policy move. The differential remuneration is aimed at encouraging crop diversification, an official statement said. Concerted efforts were made over the last few years to realign the MSPs in favor of oils eds, pulses and coarse cereals to encourage farmers shift to larger area under these crops and adopt best technologies and farm practices, to correct demand-supply imbalance. The added focus on nutri-rich nutri-cereals is to incentivize its production in the areas where rice wheat cannot be grown without long-term adverse implications for groundwater table, it added. Government officials targeted in phishing attempt they received malicious web links. The messages asked officials to update their vaccination status. Getty Images. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Several government offices, including Defense Ministry officials, were on Wednesday targeted by a malicious web link sent on WhatsApp and SMS, asking them to update their vaccination status. The message asked officials to click on www.covid19india.in to generate a digital certificate of COVID-19 inoculation. The SMS, signed with an abbreviation MOHFW, that expands to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare said, as per directives of MOHFW, confirm your COVID status on https://covid19india.in and generate your vaccination certificate. An official said that when he clicked on the link, it directed to a page at Government In that resembled the government website mygov.in, and asked to key in the official email and password. An email received by a Defense Ministry official said that as part of an awareness drive regarding post-vaccination measures to be followed by armed forces, a questionnaire was required to be filled and a Google Drive link was shared. Some officials even received phone calls where the caller said he was calling from an army hospital and the official need to update the vaccination status on a link being sent on WhatsApp. The officials were sensitized to not click on the link as it appeared to be a phishing attempt to access their official emails and correspondence. A considerable part of government offices are still working from home owing to COVID-19 restrictions. Anup Chandra Pandey takes charge as EC. He has served as UP Chief Secretary. Anup Chandra Pandey. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Retired IAS officer Anup Chandra Pandey on Wednesday took charge as Election Commissioner, the Election Commission of India, ECI, said in a statement. Mr. Pandey, a 1984 batch IAS officer of the Uttar Pradesh cadre, joins Chief Election Commissioner, CEC, Sushil Chandra and Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar to complete the 3-member commission. He retired as Chief Secretary of Uttar Pradesh in 2019. Under his administrative leadership as Chief Secretary, the state successfully organized the Kumbh Mela at Prayagraj and Paravasi Bhartiya at Varanasi Diwas in 2019, the statement read. Interest in writing. Mr. Pandey had served in the Defense and Labor and Employment Ministries. Mr. Pandey has a keen interest in writing and has authored a book titled Governance in Ancient India, which explores the evolution, nature, scope, functions, and all related aspects of ancient Indian civil service from the Rig Veda period to 650 AD, the ECI said. Mr. Pandey was appointed by the President on Tuesday, filling the vacancy that was created after Mr. Chandra was elevated to the post of CEC upon the completion of then CEC Sunil Arora's term in April. Heavy rain affects life in Mumbai. Met Department announces onset of southwest monsoon in Maharashtra. Monsoon woes, people wading through a flooded road in Zion, Mumbai, on Wednesday. Emmanuel Yogini. Staff reporter, Mumbai. Rains lashed Mumbai on Wednesday, leading to waterlogging and disruptions in suburban local train services, as the India Meteorological Department, IMD, announced the onset of the southwest monsoon in Maharashtra. As predicted by the IMD last week, heavy to very heavy rainfall began in all parts of Mumbai. The Regional Meteorological Center has predicted similar weather for the next 5 days in the coastal part of Maharashtra. According to the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, BMC, Mumbai received 181.01 mm rainfall in 12 hours from 5 am to 5 pm on Wednesday. According to the data, the city area received 137.82 mm rainfall while western and eastern suburbs received 190.78 mm and 214.44 mm rainfall respectively. A total of 6 instances of wall collapse were recorded but no injuries were reported. Central Railway suspended its suburban local train traffic on the main line of CSTM to Thane at 9:55 am on Wednesday due to inundation in Kerala and other areas. Similarly, train traffic was suspended on the CSTM Mankurd Harbour line after the water level rose above 4 inches due to high rainfall and high tide. The railway said that it was working in coordination with BMC to control the situation. High tide at 11:43 am combined with high rainfall had led to flooding in the city and on railway tracks. All railway pumps at Chenabhatti, Zion, and Kerala are working to pump out the water from tracks, said the statement from Central Railway. It also had to reschedule several long journey trains due to flooding of tracks. The rainfall intensity reduced after 6 p.m., but the IMD has said that heavy to very heavy rainfall is predicted in the next 5 days. Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray visited the disaster control room of the BMC on Wednesday to check on the flood mitigation efforts. Ladakh jobs reservation decision unclear, CPI-M. Special Correspondent Srinagar. CPI-M leader M.Y. Tarigami on Wednesday described the Ladakh administration's move to reserve all jobs for locals as another half-hearted and unclear attempt by the BJP government. The government didn't even bother to consult 2 functional hill development councils in the region before taking the decision. There is no clarity in the latest order whether those applying for jobs will have to submit permanent residence certificates or domicile certificate, Mr. Tarigami said. He said unlike Ladakh, the recruitment rules framed for J&K last year allowed all domiciles, even those living in J&K for more than 7 years or studying in the UT up to class 12, as eligible to apply for jobs. Interview Abdullah Shahid, human rights should be the central theme when it comes to people. The newly elected president of the UN General Assembly says the world body and community should come together against any form of intolerance. Suhasini Haithar Srinivasan. Maldives Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid was elected president of the 76th United Nations General Assembly for 2021-22 with a striking majority of votes cast by members, 143 out of 191. Mr. Shahid spoke from New York in a virtual interview, a day after his historic win that marked the Maldives' first time at the helm of the world body, putting the Indian Ocean archipelago at the global center stage. What are your plans for what you called a presidency of hope at the General Assembly, and ensuring vaccine equity in particular? On vaccine equity, it is the first ray of hope that I want to build my presidency of hope on. It is clear that no one is safe until everyone is safe. We should avoid vaccine nationalism at all costs, because that is going to be so destructive to our efforts of making sure that we do away with this pandemic that has devastated our countries, both socially and economically. When we look at the developed countries, 1 in every 5 persons has been vaccinated, and when we look at the rest of the world, it is 1 in every 500 people. This is unacceptable. India has had to stop all vaccine exports since April. Do you still hope that it will be able to give more vaccines in the future? The situation in India, I understand, is very difficult now. But it is our hope that as soon as things get better, that we will be able to benefit from Indian vaccine. I am constantly in touch with the Indian leadership on this, our conversations are ongoing. How much was India a part of your victory at the UNGA? India was one of the first countries that came out supporting me. I thank Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar for their outstanding support for the Maldives' candidature. India has always been one of our closest friends, the best friend, that has always come to the assistance of the Maldives. In addition to India, many other countries also came out. The previous General Assembly president focused quite a lot on human rights and in particular had made comments on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir and Palestine. Will human rights issues be a big part of your agenda? Human rights issues should be the central theme when it comes to people, and the United Nations is about people. So we should, and we must have, human rights issues at the center of our debate. In particular, will an issue like J&K, which caused tensions between the outgoing president and India, be on your agenda? It will be not in line with the code of conduct of the President of the General Assembly to take sides on contentious issues, because the post, like Parliament Speaker, has to be impartial. Where are investigations into the recent attack on Speaker Mohammed Nasheed, and the renewed focus within the Maldives on tackling Islamist radicalism? The attack is being investigated by the police. It is an ongoing investigation. We have received assistance from international partners, including Australia, the United Kingdom, the US, and they are all involved in it. Extremism in whatever form is an issue that the government will address very seriously. You spoke about religious extremism, but globally there is also the rise of Islamophobia. In your new role, how do you plan to tackle both? Any form of intolerance is not to be tolerated. And I think the United Nations and the world community should come together against such intolerance. Extremism, in whatever form, should not be condoned. And I think that is the clear message that the United Nations continues to send. You plan to wear both hats, as Maldivian Foreign Minister and as the UNGA President. Is this unprecedented? There have been many precedents, the most recent being, 3 years ago, the Slovenian Foreign Minister was elected. When we look at the 75 years of the United Nations, a large number of PGAs have been sitting foreign ministers. Were you surprised by Afghanistan's candidature and disappointed that it did not allow this to be a unanimous win for the Maldives, even in South Asia? Afghanistan had been the president of the General Assembly in 1966. And this is the first time that the Maldives has contested this election. When you look at the history of the United Nations in the last 75 years, there is a generally accepted principle of rotation, when it comes to the PGA, with only 3 exceptions. When I spoke to my brother Afghanistan Foreign Minister Mohammed Atmar, I tried to convey to him the Maldives' desire to have a clean slate. But on hindsight, I must thank Dr. Zalmir Rasul for being there, and having conducted a very dignified, disciplined campaign. Having a contender gave me an opportunity to put in a lot more effort. Modi has to be removed from power. Mamta WB Chief Minister meets farm leaders. Mamta Banerjee. Special Correspondent Kolkata. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamta Banerjee on Wednesday said her next political move would be to remove Prime Minister Narendra Modi from power. I have only one thing to say, Modi has to be removed from power, the Trinamool Congress chairperson said when asked by press persons what role she wants to play in national politics. Ever since the West Bengal Assembly polls, where the Trinamool Congress defeated the BJP and retained power, questions on what role she will play in national politics have been posed to Ms. Banerjee. Meets farm leaders. During the day, she met leaders of the Samay Unite Kisan Morcha, SKM, including Rakesh Tikat, at the state secretariat and extended support to the farmers' union protesting against the 3 central farm bills. She would write to the chief ministers of the opposition-ruled states to support the cause of farmers, she stated. SKM leaders said that having defeated the BJP, Ms. Banerjee should strive to make West Bengal a model state for farmers. Ms. Banerjee said, "We have been supporting the protesting farmers from the start. We also passed a resolution in the assembly against the bills." Farm leaders requested her to visit Delhi after the COVID-19 situation improves. The chief minister said she would take the initiative so that she could have a meeting with the chief ministers of the non-BJP-ruled states on the issue. Why the center was not holding talks with the protesting farmers for the past 7 months, she asked. The chief minister also took on the center on GST on COVID-19 vaccines. Imposing GST on vaccines is like playing with the life and death of people, she said. Why vaccines were not routed through states, she asked. Tamil Nadu now leads in cases, followed by Kerala. Maharashtra. India recorded 91,720 new COVID-19 infections and 6,113 deaths on Wednesday. Special Correspondent Chennai. India recorded 91,720 new COVID-19 cases and 6,113 deaths till 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The country has so far reported a total of 2,91,79,962 cases and 3,59,670 deaths. Tamil Nadu reported 17,321 infections, followed by Kerala, 16,204, and Maharashtra, 10,989. Bihar recorded 3,971 deaths followed by Maharashtra, 661, and Tamil Nadu, 405. As many as 3,951 backlog fatalities were added to Bihar's tally on Wednesday. Maharashtra's fatalities also include backlog deaths which were missed in the previous reports. The figures do not include cases and deaths from Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, and Ladakh. The data are sourced from the respective states' health bulletins. Around 19.85 lakh samples were tested in the country on Tuesday, the results for which were made available on Wednesday. About 27.76 lakh vaccine doses were administered in the country in the 24 hours ending 7 a.m. on Wednesday, which is nearly 5.88 lakh doses less than what was recorded in the previous 24 hours. It is also 3.78 lakh more doses than what was recorded during the same period a week ago. The 7-day rolling average of daily vaccinations in the country continues to increase. It stood at 28.33 lakh on June 8, which is more than the 24.42 lakh recorded a week before, June 1. 3.4% fully vaccinated. About 20.6% of adults in India, 41.1% of those aged above 45 and 45.1% of people aged above 60, have been administered with at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine till 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday. While 14.2% of the country's population has received at least one dose, only 3.4% are fully vaccinated. The figures are based on the estimated population in 2021. Among countries with comparable economies to that of India, the share of people who are fully vaccinated in Brazil, Russia, and South Africa is 11.05%, 9.26% and 0.81% respectively. Revive free ration scheme for migrants, activists urge center they call for SC order to be implemented at the earliest. Last year, migrant and stranded workers were given dry rations by the center. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. The center must operationalize the Supreme Court's recent orders to ensure migrant workers' welfare by reviving and expanding last year's Atmanirbhar scheme to provide free rations to such workers and other needy people who do not have ration cards, according to 3 activists who are interveners in the case in the top court. They have written to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and all chief ministers to push for urgent implementation of the Supreme Court orders on May 13 and 24, directing that all migrant and stranded workers be provided dry rations and cooked food. During this time of crisis, it is unconscionable to not provide basic food and social security to the economically vulnerable workers of the country, said the letter to the Prime Minister, written by Anjali Bharadwaj, Harsh Mandir, and Jagdeep Khokar. At a time when the government has record-high stock of food grains 100 million tons as per the FCI website and there is acute distress among the working poor, this stock must be used to provide rations to all those in need. Food security net must not only be restricted to ration card holders, they said. The activists also urged the PM to ensure that the Supreme Court's directions regarding the registration of migrants, unorganized sector, and construction workers were also followed. Many of the actions by the states entail first actions by the union government, they said. In the letter to chief ministers of all states, the activists called for cooked food to be provided to migrants through community kitchens as the court had directed, apart from the distribution of dry rations. They also urged that cash transfers be given as compensation for the loss of livelihoods due to lockdowns imposed by states. Hybrid hearings to continue in courts. Chandrachud writes to High Court CJS. The Supreme Court said it may not be possible to conduct only physical hearings for some time. Legal Correspondent, New Delhi. Supreme Court E-Committee Chairperson Justice D.Y. Chandrachud has written to the Chief Justices, CJS, of the High Courts that hybrid hearings will have to continue considering the pandemic situation, dispelling notions that courts may revert to the physical hearing mode soon. The onset of the pandemic in March 2020 witnessed a quick transition within the judiciary from physical hearings to video conferencing. Justice Chandrachud noted that 96,74,257 cases were examined through video conferencing across the country during the pandemic. Considering the present situation of the pandemic, consistent with the need to protect the safety of lawyers, litigants, court staff, judges, and other stakeholders, it may not be possible to conduct only physical hearings of court proceedings and we may have to rely upon a hybrid model of hearing for some time. We need to plan effectively to be able to deal with all exigencies, he wrote to the CJS. Uniform mechanism. Justice Chandrachud, who has spearheaded the transition of the courts from physical to virtual mode, said the committee was working on a uniform video conferencing mechanism for courts across the country. However, until then, the letter requested the CJS to opt for a suitable video conferencing solution from any of the available options. Robust solution. Until the E-Committee can eventually provide one video conferencing solution for all high courts, certain steps can be taken to facilitate judicial work on the reopening of courts after the summer recess. We must ensure that a robust, efficient, and user-friendly video conferencing solution is available to users for effective hearing of court proceedings, Justice Chandrachud wrote. He urged the CJS to take corrective measures, intervene personally and keep an eye to help improve the virtual court system, especially if advocates and litigants have grievances about its quality and connectivity that impede their right to access to justice. Pakha Tiger Reserve's contingency workers go on strike. There were no officers to handle their wages due to the COVID-19-induced emergency situation. Fight for rights. Workers at Pakha Tiger Reserve in Assam on strike over non-payment of wages. Special arrangement. Rahul Karmakar Guwahati. More than 200 contingency workers of the Pakha Tiger Reserve in Arunachal Pradesh went on an indefinite strike from Wednesday over non-payment of wages since December 2020. Reserve unguarded. The 862 SQ.km. Tiger Reserve in Pakha Kesang district has been left unguarded as all the 202 workers, along with their 8 elephants, converged at the Tiger Reserve's administrative office to demand wages pending for the last 6 months. Our strike was scheduled from May 2 but was withdrawn after the Environment and Forest Minister Mama Natung promised that wages would be released. We can manage somehow, but all of us have families to maintain with our meager wages, Pakha Tiger Reserve Workers Union General Secretary Nikam Nabam said. Other than payment of wages of the staff under Project Tiger, the union has demanded regularization of the Special Tiger Protection Force, STPF, an increase of wage last revised in 2018 to 11,000 Indian rupees per month and monthly payout instead of periodic disbursement. The Pakha contingency workers were given their wages from April-November 2020 after the National Tiger Conservation Authority sanctioned 6.05 Indian rupees crore for 2020 to 2021 fiscal and released a part of it. Second installment. The second installment of 1 Indian rupee and 32 cents crore was released in January, but the money is lying in the state exchequer instead of being transferred to the divisional forest officer of our Tiger Reserve for disbursement of wages, Mr. Nabam said, adding that the workers have been borrowing or surviving on meager donations. Mr. Natung said the workers should have waited 2-3 days. There were no officers to handle their wages due to the COVID-19-induced emergency situation. But the process has been started and they should get their wages in a few days, the minister told the Hindu from state capital Itanagar. Green activists recalled a similar situation 2 years ago that led to the discontinuation of services of 53 frontline staff in the 1,895 square km Namdapha Tiger Reserve in Arunachal Pradesh. We know protecting the tiger habitats is crucial for the conservation of the striped cat in India, but it is difficult to focus on empty stomachs, a member of the Pakha Workers Union said. With jabs and sops, Kashmir gears up to welcome tourists. Tourism Department proposes special vaccination drives. Summer shine, houseboat owners and hotel staff living around Dal Lake have been vaccinated. Nisar Ahmed. Pirzada Ashik Srinagar. From vaccinating 80% stakeholders to elaborate guidelines for hotels, the Tourism Department in Kashmir has chalked out a meticulous plan to receive tourists again, as the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic dips significantly. We are working on 2 fronts for safe and secure means of reviving tourism, as the pandemic level is likely to dip further. First, special vaccination drives for all stakeholders involved with the tourism industry. 2. Capacity building on protocols to handle tourists and ensure their safety during the stay in Kashmir, Ahsan ul Haq Kasthi, deputy director in the tourism department, told The Hindu. According to the department, around 75% tourism stakeholders, including shikarawallas, houseboat owners, and hotel staff around the Dal Lake, have been vaccinated. Similar vaccination drives were also conducted in tourist hotspots of Pahalgam and Gulmarg. We are speeding up the vaccination drive to ensure that all get double doses in time, Mr. Kastha said. The Tourism Department, along with the Health Department and expert academics from Kashmir, is working on capacity building among the hotel staff to train them on how to deal with tourist flow. We are working on new standard operating procedures SOPs for hotels, like ensuring well-ventilated and airy spaces, and new guidelines for the staff and restaurants, Mr. Kastha said. The gondola in Gulmarg, Asia's highest cable car project, has also been directed to reduce the number of tourists ferried in a cabin. Make RT-PCR must. Meanwhile, Kashmir-based tour operators have demanded that RT-PCR tests should be made mandatory for all tourists heading for Kashmir now. Rapid antigen tests at the Srinagar airport have not been effective during the second wave. RT-PCR should be made must and the number of tourists traveling to Kashmir need to be regulated, said Nasir Shah, chairman of the Indian Association of Tour Operators, Jammu and Kashmir chapter. He said only vaccinated tourists should book their tickets. All vehicles associated with the tourism industry should not fill more than 40% of seats, he added. Mr. Shah said contactless check-ins and barcode access to menus need to be introduced. Thank you. International news. U.S. Senate passes huge innovation bill. It seeks to pump more than $170 billion into tech research to counter growing economic threat from China. Tough competition, an employee making microchips at a factory in Nantong, China. AFP. Agence France-Presse Washington. The U.S. Senate passed a sweeping industrial policy bill on Tuesday aimed at countering the surging economic threat from rival China, overcoming partisan divisions to support pumping more than $170 billion into research and development. With both American political parties increasingly worried about competition from Asia's largest power, the measure cleared the chamber on a 68-32 vote, one of the most significant bipartisan achievements in Congress since Joe Biden's presidency began in January. It also represents the largest investment in scientific research and technological innovation in generations, according to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. The bill now heads to the House of Representatives, which earlier passed a different version. The two will have to be reconciled into a single bill before it is sent to the White House for the president's signature. Biden encouraged. Mr. Biden said he was encouraged by the Senate's passage of the United States Innovation and Competition Act. We are in a competition to win the 21st century, and the starting gun has gone off, Mr. Biden said. As other countries continue to invest in their own research and development, we cannot risk falling behind. America must maintain its position as the most innovative and productive nation on Earth. The package, a key provision of which addresses a shortage of semiconductors that has slowed U.S. auto production this year, will help U.S. industry bolster its capacity and improve technology. It is seen as crucial for U.S. efforts to avoid being outmaneuvered by Beijing as the adversaries compete in the race to technological innovation. Today, the Senate took a critical bipartisan step forward to make the investments we need to continue America's legacy as a global leader in innovation, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said in a statement praising the passage of the bill. This funding isn't just about addressing the current semiconductor chip shortage, it is about long-term investments, she said. Mr. Schumer called the measure one of the most important things this chamber has done in a very long time, a statement of faith in America's ability to seize the opportunities of the 21st century. Key areas. The proposal aims to address a number of technological areas in which the U.S. has fallen behind China. The bill allocates $52 billion in funding for a previously approved plan to increase domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. It also authorizes $120 billion over 5 years for activities at the National Science Foundation to advance priorities, including research and development in key areas such as artificial intelligence and quantum science. And it facilitates tie-ups between private firms and research universities. This is an opportunity for the United States to strike a blow on behalf of answering the unfair competition that we are seeing from Communist China, said Republican Senator Roger Wicker, one of the main co-sponsors. No decision yet on Indian consulate in Adu Atoll. Sola sections in Maldives oppose Indian heavy-handedness. Ibrahim Mohammed Sola. Mira Srinivasan Colombo. The Maldives has made no decision on opening an Indian consulate in its southern Adu Atoll, President Ibrahim Mohammed Sola said on Tuesday, a fortnight after the Indian cabinet cleared a proposal for it. The president remarked on the proposed Indian consulate during a press conference on the COVID-19 situation in the country, spokesman Mabruk Aziz told The Hindu from Capital Mail. Mr. Sola pointed out that having multiple sites offering consular services in one country is quite common, Mr. Aziz said. President Sola's comments appeared to keep the option open, amid an ongoing #SaveAdu social media campaign by a section of Maldivians skeptical of another Indian mission presence, in addition to the embassy in Male. Legislators from Adu and local body representatives from the ruling coalition widely perceived as India-friendly have pledged support to the initiative. Speaker Mohammed Nashed, who is currently in Berlin, recovering from injuries sustained in an assassination attempt last month, said in a recent tweet that Adu's thinking has always been one that is open to the world. Both Adu and Maldives will benefit from the creation of an Indian consulate in Adu, he said in a Dhivhi language tweet on June 5. Opposition voices, which earlier led an #IndiaOut campaign against enhanced military cooperation between the neighbors, have opposed the proposed consulate. Apart from its strategic location in the Indian Ocean, Adu is the second largest city in the archipelago, home to over 30,000 people. Indian government sources familiar with the proposal said the rationale for the consulate was to help Adu residents with speedy visa services. All the same, the frequent visa requirements of locals is yet to convince Maldivians who see a new consulate with suspicion, especially on the heels of a $33 million Maldivian police training facility that India is helping build in Aduh. On June 3, local publication Times of Aduh ran an editorial titled, "Indian Consulate in Aduh City, a possible, safe house, for Indian spies." Local sensitivities. Further, the fact that the announcement appeared in the Indian media last month, before either government made an announcement, has prompted criticism of Indian heavy-handedness. According to the Maldives' former ambassador to India Ahmed Mohammed, who served former President Abdullah Yamin's administration, New Delhi must be more aware of the sensitivities within the Maldives. We saw similar apprehensions among our people when India in 2018 was reluctant to take back the helicopters sent here, even after our former President Yamin government requested them. It was seen as boots on the ground, a challenge on our independence and a violation of our sovereignty, he told The Hindu. The decision to open a consulate in Aduh invokes similar suspicion, in his view. The fact that the decision was first reported in the Indian media also shows that sort of heavy-handedness. UK-based Maldivian academic Hassan Ugail, who hails from Aduh, underscored the need for a data-driven approach to establish a consulate. In principle, I am supportive of consulates of countries, including India, to be established in Aduh. However, I am not supportive of the present setup being proposed, he said. Pointing to the economic growth prospects argument made by some in favor of opening a consulate, he said there are no signs yet of such economic growth, investments, or mass tourism from India to Aduh city. We must first demonstrate the case with facts, figures, and numbers, and demonstrate signs that such activities are actually taking place. The argument of, let us establish a consulate and let us wait for economic growth to take place, makes little sense, Professor Ugail said. UN Rights Rapporteur warns of starvation deaths in Myanmar. Agence France Presse Washington. The UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar has warned of mass deaths from starvation and disease in the wake of fighting between rebel groups and junta forces in the east of the country. Myanmar has been in chaos and its economy paralyzed since a February putsch and a brutal military crackdown on dissent that has killed over 800, according to a local monitoring group. Fighting has flared in several communities, especially in townships that have seen a high death toll at the hands of the police, and some locals have formed defense forces. Clashes have escalated in Kayah state near the Thai border in recent weeks. The UN estimates around 1,000,000 people have been displaced. The junta's brutal, indiscriminate attacks are threatening the lives of many thousands of men, women, and children in Kayah, Tom Andrews said in a statement on Twitter on Tuesday. Let me be blunt. Mass deaths from starvation, disease, and exposure, on a scale we have not yet seen, could occur in Kayah state absent immediate action. Diplomatic efforts to halt the bloodshed have been led by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, of which Myanmar is a member, but the bloc is riven with infighting and has managed to put little pressure on the junta. UN Rights Rapporteur warns of starvation deaths in Myanmar. Agence France Presse Washington. The UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar has warned of mass deaths from starvation and disease in the wake of fighting between rebel groups and junta forces in the east of the country. Myanmar has been in chaos and its economy paralyzed since a February putsch and a brutal military crackdown on dissent that has killed over 800, according to a local monitoring group. Fighting has flared in several communities, especially in townships that have seen a high death toll at the hands of the police, and some locals have formed defense forces. Clashes have escalated in Kayah state near the Thai border in recent weeks. The UN estimates around 1,000,000 people have been displaced. The junta's brutal, indiscriminate attacks are threatening the lives of many thousands of men, women, and children in Kayah, Tom Andrews said in a statement on Twitter on Tuesday. Let me be blunt. Mass deaths from starvation, disease, and exposure, on a scale we have not yet seen, could occur in Kayah state absent immediate action. Diplomatic efforts to halt the bloodshed have been led by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, of which Myanmar is a member, but the bloc is riven with infighting and has managed to put little pressure on the junta. Erdogan to visit Karabakh region won by Azerbaijan. Agence France Presse Ankara. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Wednesday he will visit Azerbaijan to celebrate its victory over Armenia in a brief war last year, touring a region recaptured in disputed Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan seized back swathes of territory in the separatist ethnic Armenia region with the help of Turkish combat drones and other weaponry from Ankara. The conflict claimed 6,000 lives and ended with a Russian-brokered truce in November that saw ethnic Armenians pushed out of large parts of the land they had won during a brutal post-Soviet war in the 1990s. Mr. Erdogan said he will fly to Azerbaijan from next week's NATO summit in Brussels and watch Turkey play Wales in Baku in the Euro 2020 football championship on Wednesday. He said he and his brother, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, will then visit Shushat, which fell to Azerbaijani forces during the war. Quad vaccine partnership goal still on track. U.S. official U.S. intends to hold a very ambitious Quad meeting. Kurt Campbell AP. Sriram Lakshman, Washington, D.C. A top Biden administration official has said the Quad group of countries India, Australia, the US, and Japan are on track to meet their goal of producing at least 1 billion vaccines for the Asia region by the end of 2022, despite the massive COVID-19 wave that has hit India in recent weeks. The Quad vaccine partnership was announced at a summit-level meeting in March, before the pandemic situation in India deteriorated significantly. Our discussions with both our partners in the private sector and also in government suggest that we are, knock on wood, still on track for 2022, but the most intense efforts right now really are in the short term, Kurt Campbell, the Biden administration's top official for Indo-Pacific policy, said on Tuesday. He was speaking at an event organized by the Center for New American Security, a think tank in Washington, D.C. Mr. Campbell said the U.S. had been in close consultations with its partners and with India. He acknowledged that this has been an extremely difficult period for India and that the US has tried to stand with Delhi and has tried to bring private and public sector support for India. I think we're feeling relatively confident as we head into 2022, but we recognize that what we are facing right now across Asia, in fact, across the world, are new strains that spread more rapidly. So even countries that did extremely well through social distancing and masking are now facing outbreaks, he said, adding the only way to counter this situation was through vaccine diplomacy and that the US was trying to step that up. The second wave of the pandemic in India revealed the country's COVID-19 vaccine shortages. The US has initiated a program to give 80 million of its excess vaccines to countries in need of them, by the end of June. In-person meeting. Mr. Campbell said the US intends to hold a very ambitious Quad leaders meeting in Washington. But our goal is to hold an in-person Quad meeting, very ambitious meeting here in Washington in the fall with all leaders in attendance. We will ensure that we've taken the necessary steps on the vaccine deliverable. We intend to build on that, he said. He also suggested there would be some infrastructure-related outcomes from this Quad meeting. Mr. Campbell had suggested this at the end of May as well, at an event in Stanford. A White House official declined to confirm that Washington would be the location of the autumn Quad meeting, when approached by The Hindu on Tuesday following Mr. Campbell's comments. We want to do something constructive with respect to infrastructure, and I think we're going to take some other steps to build out the Quad to ensure that as an unofficial gathering, it still is the defining feature of modern diplomacy, linking these key maritime democracies in a way that is deeply consequential for the 21st century, Mr. Campbell said on Tuesday. In response to a question on whether the Quad would expand at some point or focus on deepening cooperation between the existing four members, Mr. Campbell suggested the current focus was for now to deepen and broaden familiarity within existing partners, but did not rule out other countries eventually participating in Quad initiatives. Biden drops plan to ban TikTok. Agence France-Presse, Washington. President Joe Biden on Wednesday revoked executive orders from his predecessor Donald Trump seeking to ban Chinese-owned mobile apps TikTok and WeChat over national security concerns, the White House said. A White House statement said that instead of banning the apps, the administration would carry out a criteria-based decision framework and rigorous, evidence-based analysis to address the risks from internet applications controlled by foreign entities. Mr. Biden's order seeks to identify any connected software applications that may pose an unacceptable risk to U.S. national